Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Inner Conquest, the world's greatest modern metaphysics channel. I'm your host, Jacob Edens, and today we are going to be discussing what the first battle is. So, a good example of understanding states of consciousness as they precede what you could call a manifestational event, which is essentially just understanding the correlation between an unseen cause and a seen effect, which in other words is if you think of your internal world, you could call that for category's sake a fourth dimensional reality, right? In your imaginative reality, you can see, smell, taste, touch. Like if I go into my mind right now, I can smell what raspberry jam smells like, right? How do I do that? I don't have a nose, right? That's called spiritual sensation. So when you understand that spiritual sensation and dimensional spacing is essentially your imaginative act precedes a physical, what you would call a third dimensional reality external to you. In the same way that an architect thinks about a house over and over and over again, gets it perfect, blah, 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 and then the house is there, right? What you want to understand is that every single battle, every single struggle that you face is first spiritual. And what that means is that it's in that internal realm, right? Because consciousness creates reality. Reality does not create consciousness. Consciousness is another word for awareness. So what happens is internally, if you were to strip yourself of all of your faculties, including your spiritual sensations, what you would be is a pure awareness, meaning that you'd be aware and you could focus and you could think, right? So when you have something, say you're training, right? Say you're on a run. Say you're training for a marathon, you're on a run, okay? When you're running, you will start to have, when you hit your quote-unquote limit, a crescendoing feeling of something not feeling good, like you're going to run out of breath or something like that, right? Now, what you can do is you can accept that and understand that, oh, this thing's happening, so now I have to do this. Or you can use your mind to override what that state is trying to impress upon you, right? So if this thing's saying you're tired, you should quit, take a break, you have the ability to use your imagination to go, nope, and pull your awareness off of that and put it on a version of you that is still running and doesn't need to do that, okay? So that's how you mentally overcome states, right? So everything external to you, it is essentially, if you don't like it, an unwanted state that's impressing itself upon you, right? Like if you meet somebody and you're like, wow, they really impress me. What do you want to do? I want to be like that person, right? When you have an unwanted state and you go, wow, that was an impressively negative state. I never want to be near that again, right? You know to avoid it, right? So what you want to understand is that your awareness is your primary faculty because you're a thinker and a focuser. So if you're thinking and you're focusing, the way that you shift your thinking and your focus is by placing your awareness on different sectors of reality. So when you talk about different sectors, you have a external, already physicalized third dimension, and then you have a becoming reality, which is that fourth dimensional internal reality. In the same way that if I'm thinking about taxes and I'm negatively antagonistic towards it, the taxes aren't here yet. That's all me engaging in a state that's sour. That's an internal dynamic of me having my awareness on what is called a non-fulfillment reality. There's no taxes, there's no tax collector, nothing's coming to get you, but you are self-generating an unwanted anticipatory state of a negative event, and you're saturating your being in it. So you're essentially magnetizing events that are correlative to that vibration by entertaining that internally, okay? So when you understand that the first battle is always spiritual, what you understand is that when things happen externally to you, they're the byproduct of the previous states that you've been dwelling in. So once you understand that, you take a lot more concern with your inner world because you understand that if you start to get involved in an unwanted state, the quicker you can shift out of that internally and go to the state of the solution, you can actually avoid all of the following manifestational events because you're no longer oscillating at that frequency. So when you're thinking and fearing something internally, what you're doing is you're essentially saying with your vibration, this thing's bigger than me and it can hurt me, okay? So what you want to do is when something happens, you want to understand what is the emotional cloud behind this. What is the conscious state that is accompanying this internally that is resonant with this, right? And you want to deal with that first because dealing with that inner domain can permanently desync you from the vibratory resonance of the following manifestational creations that are based at that frequency. Meaning that if you have, a fear of money every time you spend money, it's not that you need to go and spend more money. It's that you need to deal with that root fear that's right here, right? And what's better about that is it's all a consciousness thing, so it's all under your control. You never have to place your awareness on anything you don't want to internally, right? Because you always have a choice. You can always think and imagine as if it's already solved, or you can think and imagine as if it's not already solved. This is all inner world, right? So as you understand that you have that choice, it's much more about catching things at the root before they escalate and gain momentum, right? So if you have a fear thing, you go, no, it's actually like this. And you direct your conscious imagination instead of just reacting to it. Because when you react to something, you're essentially saying with your vibration that this is real, this is true, and I need to deal with it, okay? It's not that you don't react to a lion trying to attack you. But if you're chronically stressed and chronically worried a majority of your day, that's because you're in a bad conscious state. The external world literally is not hurting you. You're saturating yourself in dis-ease, an uneasy state, which transforms itself into disease, right? So you want to understand that your internal world is a vibratory structure. And if you can get that in harmony and alignment, you're just broadcasting harmony and alignment all day. So whenever you run into something, when you have an expectation of it being a certain way, understand that that is a formed assumption, okay? So an assumption is an accepted belief without contradiction. And a belief is a thought that you think so many times that you don't contradict it. The difference between a thought and a belief is that there's no contradiction, right? And you can tell your assumptions by the way that you identify with them. So if you have an assumption that there's always going to be enough oxygen, right? You don't question it. You don't go outside and go, I hope there's enough oxygen today. You have an assumption that there's always going to be enough. So if you take those assumptions, you can reorchestrate them into the same assumption that you have about there being enough oxygen to there being way more than enough money in your account all the time, right? Sounds crazy, but you're an energetic being with a fucking antenna that's sending signals to everything to essentially meet up with it through what you could call law of attraction from one viewpoint, right? So understanding that inner domain, understanding that you have autonomy and authority over it, and then reorganizing it based off of fulfillment realities, which is essentially a reality that has an implication that I am who I want to be and I have what I want to have, and then dominantly spending your awareness time on that fulfillment reality will reorchestrate your external world to that fulfillment reality. If you spend a dominant part of your day in a fear-based, lack-based, worry state, then your world has to respond to it, right? So when people say detach from 3D, what they're really saying is don't give effect causative principle, meaning that if you get a bill, don't think that bill has power. That bill is a reverberative manifestation from the state of fear and expectation of worry that you've been saturating your being in. So when you have that understanding, now you can start to build yourself internally in the way that you want, understanding that the universe is always going to catch the ball. The universe is always going to reflect because there's a reflective principle, all right? So as you design that interior state the way that you want, you can actually get a designer interior state. You can have it the way that you want it to be, which essentially reflects into an authentic world of you being who you want to be and having what you want to have. But that all starts internally, understanding just some basic metaphysical principles, and then taking the time to be aware of where your awareness of is, right? In the same way that somebody has a problem with their boss, but they argue with them mentally all day, they are creating that next event by the participation in the mental conversation, which precedes the manifestational event in time space. So once you understand that, now you go inward and you see what is the machinery doing? What is the chronic emotional patterns? What are the thought processes that are going on? Because if you think a dominant thought process for long enough, you will ingrain that into your neurochemistry and it will become easier to access. So what happens is when you try to make a shift, it can feel like it's hard to think, if you're in fucking Mogadishu and you're trying to think that you're a billionaire and everything around you is crazy, You have to outthink your circumstances. Your circumstances can never validate you, even if you're in a posh environment. Because once you start thinking differently, everything around you is calibrated to that old version of you. And because you're in a slower, keyed down version of reality, which is this realm, everything is like fucking molasses. So that's where the ideation of persistence comes in, or faith, which is defined as loyalty to an unseen reality. Why would you need loyalty to an unseen reality if it's going to reflect? Well, because in that time delay, if you second guess or put a counter signal, you're blocking that belief. This is what happens with limiting beliefs. I am healthy, but I have psoriasis. If you were healthy, you wouldn't have psoriasis. So you can't think against yourself because your will is always being enforced. So anytime that you have something that's not the way you want it to be, it's this but this. And they contradict each other. They go to head, and they create resistance. That's why single-minded thought is so powerful, because it's also known as non-resistant thought. Okay? So if I am sailing a boat, and that boat is my mind, and my mind is to get to the place, right? And I'm hitting rocks. I gotta go through the rocks. I gotta do this. I gotta do this. What's happening to my boat? It's getting all jagged and janky, and the rudder's getting messed up. So I'm going like this, okay? Now, if I have the ability to sail around the rocks, what am I doing? I'm going whoosh, 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 flexible. I'm working in a non-resistant manner. I hit resistance, back. See what I'm saying? The way that you think non-resistant is by not engaging in resistance, not from the fact that you can't overcome it, but because your goal isn't to overcome the resistance, your goal is to increase the momentum on the wanted thought process. Meaning that the more dominant time you spend just cruising, I am this, 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 without the contradiction, you are now speeding up the vibrational capacity of that sector of reality within yourself, and you're going to magnetize things a lot more to you. So that non-resistance is a big deal, because if you're contradicting all day, every day, then you are amplifying that resistance as well, because you are building through an unconscious assumption that you have to break through something. Whereas if you were to think from a habitual, generalized thought pattern of everything's going my way, everything's going my way, everything's going my way, there's no resistance on that. And as that gets momentum, you start seeing everything going your way. Now you start to get more specific. I actually have this way because everything goes my way. I actually have this way because everything goes my way. See that? Because when you put because, it means this is happening because of this. You're assigning that value. So if you have, I want to be rich, but I can't because this, you have your will split into two minds that contradict each other, because this can't happen with the other alternative and this can't happen because of the other alternative. So they go head to head. So a lot of your issues are really about retracting awareness, right? Because it's not that you can't win and see that thing defeated. You totally can. But what is more powerful in a lot of circumstances is just retracting that, getting dominant momentum on, no, everything's worked out the way I want it to. Everything's worked out the way I want it to. Because what that does is that desyncs you from the antagonistic, will-based thought process that you've energized, right? Because once you energize those things, they're like fucking trains. So once you pull back entirely, you go, nah, everything's good. Now you can build a dominant vibrational state of cohesion. And then from that cohesion, then you can get specific with your desires of whatever you want to create in the world. But without that strong foundation, you're going to have wobbly, and then you're going to have contradiction if you're not trained and disciplined to take a step back. That's the idea behind the sailing, right? You're not trying to go through the rocks on the rocks. You see the rocks, you start to feel bumpy, you retract, and then you go back into it from a different angle. It doesn't mean you're stopping. You're not losing progress. You're just not going like a fucking bull through a china shop through everything, which you have the right to do. But you also want to understand how to chronically build momentum. It's like if you have a civilization, right? And you're building a civilization, you're building, war comes in, fucks everything up. Now you got to build. War comes in, fucks everything up. Got to build. War comes in. No, you're a mobile civilization. Now you got wheels. You retract. The war comes through. Boom. Now you're building over here. War comes. You retract. Boom. Coming over here. War comes, can't even touch you. You've got too big of a fucking civilization. They see the gate and they run away, right? So you want to keep that momentum energized on wanted. So I know you guys enjoyed the video. Feel free to leave comments of future videos you'd like to see. Additionally, the link tree has all my coaching options, from the 2 protocols that I have to individual coaching sessions. And if you have a question, feel free to email me about any of that stuff. More important than any of that, go conquer. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.